Are you stuck when it comes to telling the story of your brand? Are you wanting to attract people to invest in you and your products and services, but you're not sure how to get started with storytelling? I'm sharing 5 tips for you to get started with telling a compelling story about your brand that will turn prospects into clients and clients into raving fans. Hi, I'm Nile Harris. I am a speaker, advisor, coach, and educator, working with businesses, entrepreneurs, and professionals to turn your passion and purpose into profit by helping you unleash your warrior spirit and teaching you how to business. Before we get started with the 5 tips on how to tell a compelling story about your brand, I would love it if you would take a moment to follow me at I am Nile Harris, subscribe to my YouTube channel, and let's keep the conversation going. Click and like and comment below if you find this video helpful. So let's start with 5 tips I have for you for telling a compelling story about your brand. And why is it important? Let's talk first about why it's important to tell a story. People love stories. I don't know if you know this, but the internet didn't always exist. Cultures, communities, nations, ethnicities, everything passed their history through the art of storytelling. And my grandfather was an incredible storyteller. He didn't talk very much, but when he did, he would tell stories. And I used to just sit there because I was always waiting for like, and you stories compel people. If you look at the way testimonials about your favorite brands or products, people are telling their own short stories about how they experienced the product or the service, what life was like before, and then what life was like after, and how it solved the problem. You look at ASPCA and those commercials for donations, they tell compelling stories that get at your emotions. And the reason why people love stories is because they can visualize themselves in the story. It transports them to a time in their own lives when they were experiencing that, or maybe they're experiencing it now. Stories is also how people connect. And businesses and brands that tell stories, real stories, and they get people who use those brands and products and services to tell their own stories, they perform better than brands and companies that don't, because people want to hear stories. They want to get hooked, they want to get invested, and then they want to invest more of their own resources in you, because people buy the destination, but sometimes they love to hear about the journey as well. So, the first tip that I have is about why, knowing your why. And if you've been following me for a while and Warrior Unleashed for a while, you know that I tell people to always start with their why. And my why is to do good in the world by helping do gooders do good in the world. And Warrior Unleashed is about helping people tap into that inner warrior spirit so that they can make the jump. And it doesn't matter, by the way, if that jump is into entrepreneurship, a side hustle, if that jump is to go to a new company, if that jump is to ask somebody out on a date who you've been crushing on for a while, the jump is to go for that promotion, even though you don't feel as if you have 100% of the requirements. It doesn't matter what the jump is. That warrior spirit is always there, ready to be tapped into. And I'll tell you how I came to Warrior Unleashed and Warrior Spirit. So I, in October of one year, went to the doctor for something completely mundane. No, there was nothing wrong. Regular checkup, and the nurse comes in, very nice, comes in and is taking my vitals, temperature, things like that, and we're kind of just talking in this very cold, chilly, windowless room, but her personality was so bright, and it didn't really matter that there's sort of this enclosed room. And as I'm sitting there and she's going about her business, she puts the blood pressure cuff on my wrist, and I'm sitting there holding it, legs uncrossed, hanging over the side of the table. And she's sort of chatting with me, and the beeper goes off, and she looks at it. She leaves the room. She comes back with one of the traditional cuffs, right? That you put on your arm and then they pump and pump. And, the conversation at this point has sort of stopped because she's focused and counting. And she goes, yeah, I think it's a little high. I'm going to go get another machine just to confirm. Comes back later, rolling in the standing blood pressure machine that has a traditional cuff, but it's all automated. And we're sitting there, beep, 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 as the cuff tightens, beep, beep, beep. And I can now see the numbers on the blood pressure machine. It was 170 over 110. Normal is 120 over 80. She leaves the room silently, quietly. The physician and her immediately come back into the room. How are you, Miss Harris? How are you feeling today? I'm feeling good. I'm feeling great. I worked out this morning. Is your chest hurting? No. Do you feel dizzy at all? No. I went running this morning, worked out this morning. And how was that? Was it easy? Did you have any difficulty breathing? No. My concern begins to grow. And she says, no, Miss Harris, your blood pressure is so high, you're in a hypertensive crisis, and we cannot let you leave here, or we have to transport you to the hospital. It's your choice. You can stay here and we can monitor you and treat you. But if it doesn't come down, we will have to send you to a hospital for emergency intervention. Did you know that your blood pressure was this high? Now, here's the thing. I had known that my blood pressure had been increasing slowly, and I had been managing it through lifestyle, exercising regularly. I don't eat a lot of sodium, don't eat a lot of high fat foods. So the things that I'm doing in my life are not increasing my blood pressure. But I knew, staring at that physician who was staring back at me, I knew what it was. And there was one aspect of my lifestyle that was contributing to my blood pressure. And I knew it, and I kept doing it, and I kept doing it every day. I signed up for it every single day, hoping that it would make a difference. But the reason that my blood pressure was 170 over 110 was my job. Point blank, period. So eventually my blood pressure comes down. And as I'm leaving, the doctor gives me grave words of warning. She said, you need to book an appointment with your primary care physician immediately, and you need to go on medication. I was driving home, wondering how I got to this point. How did I get here? What happened? How did I let a job run my life to the point where I am in a hypertensive crisis? And I pictured this time in my life when I probably was about 7 or 8, and I had gone with my mother to visit a friend in Indiana. And we were walking along Lake Michigan, very cold, sort of overcast day. And we were the only people out there because it had been sort of raining for a while. But the waves were like coming in, and they were super high, and they were probably like twice as high as I was at this 7-year-old. And I grabbed this stick and I wade out into the water, and I start beating the waves with this stick, and I'm having a ball. It's like me against Lake Michigan, and the waves are rolling in, and I didn't care about everything else. I just cared about what was right in front of me. And looking at this memory in my mind's eye, I realized that was my warrior spirit. That was the curiosity, the wonder that I can do anything. I'm invincible. That girl right there, what would she think about this moment right now? Is this what she envisioned for her? And at that moment, my warrior awakened, and it began to push, and I began to move into the jump zone. And 2 months later, I quit my job and I jumped. I didn't have a plan, and I don't recommend it, but that's how Warrior Unleashed came to be, came to pass. And I work with people to tap into their person, Think of that moment in your life, in your childhood, because that's when our warriors are kind of running rampant. They're jumping off of stuff, and we're scraping up our knees, and we're touching hot irons, right? We're doing all the things. Think about that moment. Think about that time. That was your warrior spirit. That's how we begin to embody it, right? So that was the first tip, knowing your why. That is my why, because so many of us are living in high blood pressure situations and stressful situations. Anxiety is at an all-time level. Thank you, COVID. And we have buried our warriors, but our warriors never go away. They're still there. Tip number 2, structure the beginning, middle, and develop characters and use names. Now, in the story that I just told you, I had a beginning. I went to the doctor. I gave you characters. Now, I didn't use their names because, well, HIPAA and all that, but you knew that it was my doctor. You knew that it was the nurse. Then there is a middle, right? It begins to climax. You begin to say, oh my gosh, I'm in a hypertensive crisis. And I get into the car and I drive home. And then we get to the end where I quit that job. I get my life and I jump. And I didn't have a plan, but lots of things happened after that. I took time and I did all those things. Now, the end will be relevant to the lesson that you're providing. So, whatever your business or your brand is, the end will lead directly into why you developed your business. And that's exactly what I did. I said, I activated my warrior spirit and I realized that my superpower, my gift is to help people unleash their warrior spirit. It is to activate it. It is to help people get out of their mind, to liberate your dreams from the confine of your mind. That is my superpower. That is my gift. And whatever your brand is, whatever your story is, you have that beginning. That's where you get them hooked. You have your middle. That's where you're doing the build up to the climax. You remember this in grade school, the way storybooks were written, the way books are written now. I don't know. I'm a fan of Stephen King. He did this really well. And then you get to that end. What was the result? What was the outcome? What did you learn? Now you're teaching people or you're sharing what you learned with people so that they don't have to struggle the way that you struggled. That is the purpose of bringing that story to a conclusion. So tip number 2 was structure your beginning and the middle, use characters and use names when you can. Tip number 3, create visuals and imagery. Let them create it in their mind. Now, I gave you lots of little small details about the temperature of the room, how big it was. There were no windows. There was overcast. It was gray, how small I was, how big the waves were, the looks on their faces, right? All of these details draw people in, and they can now paint a picture and go back to a moment in their own life when this was similar. You know, if you're doing this through a presentation, by the way, or you're doing this on a website or wherever, don't include a visual from your actual story. Meaning, if you're describing a house, don't put the picture of the actual house because you want to let people's imaginations work, right? You want to let them picture a moment from their life because you're trying to create connection. The point isn't necessarily to convey the information and saying, this was the what if I held up a picture of the doctor's office? Well, now I'm taking you out of your doctor's office and I'm putting you into my doctor's office. The point is we need to connect from your point of view and my point of view. And that's the thing. You want to create imagery. You want to be detailed. You want to talk about the sights, the smells, anything that will help your potential client get in to the point in their life that matches with your story. And they might even add other details, right? I didn't talk about how things smelled, but maybe for them, a smell would come up. So that's tip number 3, create visuals and imageries. Tip number 4, create suspense. Hook them. That's what I'm saying. You want people to be like on the edge of their seat, right? You're like, what's happening? You create the suspense and you're like, yeah, And then what? And then what? Like you want people to kind of be like leaning in, because people, if they're not hooked in the first 5 seconds, if you're doing this as a video, if it's not in the first 5 seconds, they will scroll on. If they're right in front of you and you're giving a presentation, you have really a little bit longer, but you have like that first minute where you want to get them hooked. So you might want to start with a dramatic opening. Have you ever seen a movie? I love movies like this, where they start with the end and then they kind of go back and they'll say 1 year before. And then you're like, well, wait, no, what happened? Right. So you want to create suspense. You want to hook them. You want to get them in there. And you can do that. So I created some suspenseful moments, like when I was in the car and I'm driving home, like, how did I get here? What happened? So now you want to, so I've told you it's my job. And in the end, I told you that I quit the job. But in the middle, right before that, I created suspense by taking you back into a moment in my childhood, because now you're kind of like, well, wait, did you quit the job? Did you not quit the job? So create suspense, hook them, get them in there, because that's when people get invested and their wheels are really starting to turn. And then you hit them in the end with the end. Tip number 5, deliver the ending with a message, with a lesson. And I explained this a little bit earlier when I was talking about tip number 2, but delivering the ending with a lesson. And one of the ways that we could do that, so I've told you my story of how I became a warrior, warrior unleashed, and what are some of the lessons that I want people to take away from that. So let's say I'm talking with a group of salespeople. The lesson that I want people to take away from that story is about how to, if I'm speaking to them about what increasing their um, performance to their goals or things like that, and salespeople are already kind of warriors. They're already out there putting themselves out there and getting told no 100 times before they get one yes. And the lesson there would be, think of your customers or all of the potential customers as like a Michigan. And what's your stick? Your stick is what makes you the unique salesperson. Don't focus on all of the other noise, the rest of Lake Michigan. Focus on that wave that's right in front of you right then. What does that potential customer want from you in that moment? Pay attention how big that wave is, how small you are. What do you need to do to attack that wave in that moment so that you come out winning in that moment? Right? You craft your story to your audience. So it's important to know your audience. It's important to know your ideal audience, your ideal customer. One of the things I talk about really Warrior Unleashed is about mindset. So I'm giving the lesson in a way that helps people understand the mindset that they need. And then I also teach people how to business. And what that means is what that stick is, that stick is your tool. It's your warrior's weapon. It is your warrior's weapon is your superpower, your gift that you were given to put out into the world. How many people are sitting around waiting for your particular gift, but you're being selfish with your gift and holding on to it? So that was tip number 5, delivering the ending with a lesson that is specific to your audience. And that can take several different ways. So let's kind of review the importance of telling your story. People want to connect with you. In this world right now, we're actually seeing a pivot back to people wanting to connect with the brands and connect with people that are providing them with services or products. They want to connect. They want to have more intimacy with the brand. And story is a great way to do that. Storytelling hooks people, it invests them. It can take a potential client, turn them into a customer, and then turn them into a raving fan that attracts other potential clients and customers and more raving fans. So telling your story is a great and unique way to connect with potential customers in a way that will get them to invest in you and invest in themselves. So, those tips again, number one, know your why. Be crystal clear with it. Again, my why is to do good in the world by helping do gooders do good in the world. That's you. Tip number two, structure beginning, middle, and end. Develop characters, use names wherever you can. Tip number three, create visuals and imagery, but never replace the imagery with something actual from your story. Allow their imaginations to wander so they can recreate something from their own lives that connects with yours. Tip number four, suspense. Hook them. You want them to be leaning in. You want these people on the edge of their seat leaning in. What is she going to say next? What's going to happen now? Right? Create suspense. Tip number five, deliver the ending with a lesson that is specific to your audience or ideal customer. That's it. I hope that this was helpful. If so, please drop me a like or a comment below and feel free to share any of your own storytelling tips. And let's keep this conversation going. Please subscribe and follow me at I am Nile Harris on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, and LinkedIn. And feel free to go to my website, sign up for the weekly e-newsletter. It's free and it is packed with information about how to unleash your warrior spirit, mindset, business tips, tools, all the things. But what makes it so special is that it is AI curated, which means the more you click on stories in the email, the more stories will come up that are important to you. No two people receive the exact same e-newsletter. So get on my list, Warrior Nation. I am Nile Harris, and I'm looking forward to catching you back here real soon.